Hello and welcome to our special coverage of the Davos Agenda for 2022. I'm Wang Mengmang in Beijing. The World Economic Forum is holding the annual event online for a second year in a row over COVID concerns. Global leaders will take part in a number of sessions under the theme State of the World as they look at some of the most pressing challenges. Chinese President Xi Jinping will deliver a speech at the invitation of Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the forum. And this won't be the first time President Xi has spoken at the World Economic Forum. He also made a speech in 2017 and again last year. Let's now have a quick reminder of what he said.
At the World Economic Forum at Davos in 2017, Chinese President Xi Jinping called for joint efforts to advance economic globalization. He said cooperation is the key to success.
No matter how difficult it is impossible to stop the pace of human progress. When encountering difficulties, don't blame yourself or others. Don't give up confidence nor evade responsibility. Just work together to overcome difficulties.
By then, President Xi was talking about what some experts called the worst recession since the Second World War. 4 years later, he reiterated the importance of unity in overcoming more daunting challenges, such as the pandemic.
The problems facing the world are intricate and complex. The way out is by upholding multilateralism and building a community with a shared future for mankind.
His appeal has been echoed widely and repeatedly.
President Xi underlined the importance of global cooperation and multilateralism, and that we are in a win-win world and not a zero-sum world. So when we trade with each other, it will also create jobs, it will also create additional growth.
President Xi called on countries to step up coordination in macroeconomic policies, abandon ideological prejudices, and follow a path of peaceful coexistence and mutual benefits. He said public health emergencies like COVID-19 may very well reoccur, but global problems could only be resolved through unity and consultation instead of confrontation.
So from climate change to the global economy, heads of state, business leaders, and other participants at the virtual event will be looking to craft solutions to the world's biggest challenges. The event will also mark the launch of several forum initiatives, and these include efforts to fast-track the race to net zero emissions, establish cyber resilience, help bridge the vaccine manufacturing gaps, and prepare for the next pandemic. In a report released by the World Economic Forum, it revealed that 84% of experts and leaders surveyed are worried or concerned in their outlook for the world. Only about 4% feel optimistic. 11% believe the global recovery will accelerate. And the report also said climate risks are at the heart of concerns this year. And other challenges include growing social divides, heightened cyber risks, and uneven global recovery. While the president of the World Economic Forum shared his view on what a community with a shared future for mankind means for the world economy. Here it is.
The pandemic has taught us how deeply the world is interconnected and how urgently we need to collaborate. This is also why the words of President Xi in his New Year address last year, that the whole world is one family, ring so true. The President's idea of a shared future aligns with the World Economic Forum's mission of strengthening public-private cooperation. Looking at the year ahead, building and deepening global connections will be so crucial. The only way we can end the pandemic, strengthen our economies, and address climate change is by working together. The reality is that global challenges need global solutions.
And now let's get some more insights. I'm pleased to be joined throughout the program by Professor Liu Baocheng. He is the Dean of the Center for International Business Ethics. Thank you so much, Professor, for being with us on our special program. World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab says that this week's event is the starting point for a new dialogue on global cooperation. But we know that every year before the pandemic, the good and the great always gather in the Swiss Alps to, come up with solutions to the big questions. What are your top concerns this year, and how can the summit really addressing the most pressing issues?
Well, I think President Xi really hit on the point. I can summarize President Xi's speech with three C's. One is that we are facing a daunting challenge for the entire world, and now it is time to shore up our confidence because human progress can never be altered or stopped by any type of difficulties. And then cooperation is the only way out, and we need to work hand in hand without really finger pointing to each other, but we need to find strategic solutions to keep the world more resilient and to keep the world on a happy ending, and so that we are there to drive away the protectionism. We are there to enhance the multilateralism. So this is the situation. So now the world economy is really suffering a unprecedented challenge where the slow recovery is there, and the inflation is almost at the doorstep. So therefore, political leaders, business leaders, and consumers as citizens themselves, they need also to face such challenge and build confidence so that they can really collaborate across different circles so that we are able to overcome such sort of difficulty in order to embrace a better tomorrow.
Yeah, and we know that the COVID pandemic is running into its third year, and so much has changed all over the world. And, this drastically different COVID experience has really made, widened divides in countries around the world. So rebuilding trust and enhancing cooperation would be a daunting task, wouldn't it?
Well, definitely. So the key to address the challenge through cooperation is lying fundamentally in the trust. So first of all, people will trust their ability by working together. They are able to overcome such a sort of daunting difficulty. Second, we should be able to trust the supply chain, which is they're working under difficulty but able to manage to supply people. And the other is that we have to trust our own way to manage our own life, by resuming the production and in the same time protect ourselves. And then, political leaders need to build a consensus that they need now to address the common enemy the entire humanity is facing over two major issues. Actually three major issues. Over long term, it is really the climate change that endanger our planet. And then immediately the COVID-19, which a lot more resurgence, which was really unexpected. And now also, the global economic recovery, because that's the lifeline that people live to, so that people are able to find the right job and return to the right job, so that the world can really come into a stability and struggle under resilience. And with the resilience, we are able to conquer the vulnerability. And more importantly, I think the developed world needs to give a better hand to those underdeveloped world so that vaccines can be spread out, because after all, we share one planet, and with only one part, we cannot really live in a better life. So therefore, the interdependence will drive us to think more profoundly of the global benefit that we all have to harvest with more difficulties and with more of the generosity from those people with a sort of upper hand to help those less developed world.
Yeah, Professor, I also want to get your thoughts on this World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report. It says the most serious challenge from the coronavirus pandemic is perhaps in the long run economic stagnation. What are your thoughts on the economic consequences, and when is it ever possible that the situation can be eased?
Well, as you mentioned, that actually lots of surveys over business leaders show a sort of a pessimism over the economic performance over the coming year, which is true though. But right now we are facing several challenges on the economic front. One is the whole world economy is under rapid transformation, and before we are able to see the silver lining for the better utility of artificial intelligence, big data, etc., large investment needs to continually to put into it. So therefore, the inflation, over the continuous support for R&D and also the continuous support for those families who are struggling under the poverty line is something that is under big consideration. So, inflation is something that we have to be very watchful. But without such sort of support, the global economy will face the stagnation. So therefore, the bankers and also the financial leaders will have to balance between inflation versus stagnation. And now the good part is that the world are still working together. The supply chain is still working, although it is getting more and more expensive, and we have to find a way to reduce the unnecessary barriers that block the successful movement of logistics. And for example, the U.S. will have to consider very seriously to lower the trade tariff against China, because that's going to add huge burden not only on their own consumers but also on the world economy. And also that the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, set a good example, which is quite a showcase that under such a difficult time, 15 nations work together to reduce the tariff, to remove the barriers for investment, is something that we have to go to, and the world should really look this as a good showcase.
Yeah, well, Professor Liu, you mentioned so many important issues, and now I want to pursue one particular subject, is inflation. Inflation has really jumped up the agenda, hasn't it? Thanks to, disruptions to supply chains and surging global gas prices. To what extent do you think that inflation could further worsen the situation in terms of an uneven economic recovery globally?
Well, the leaders are still treading on a very thin ice because on one hand,
Professor, I'm afraid we have to leave you there because we're now listening to President Xi Jinping's speech at the Davos Agenda. And as you can see, COVID-19 is calling off a real-life forum this year at the Swiss Alps, and instead world leaders will be addressing the forum. Actually, it's named the Davos Agenda throughout the week to make their points to the world.
Professor Klaus Schwab, ladies and gentlemen, friends, greetings to you all. It is my pleasure to attend this virtual session of the World Economic Forum. In 2 weeks' time, China will celebrate the advent of spring in the Lunar New Year, the Year of the Tiger. In Chinese culture, tiger symbolizes bravery and strength. As the Chinese people often refer to spirited dragon and dynamic tiger, or soaring dragon and leaping tiger. To meet the severe challenges facing humanity, we must add wings to the tiger and act with the courage and strength of the tiger to overcome all obstacles on our way forward. We must do everything necessary to clear the shadow of the pandemic and boost economic and social recovery and development, so that the sunshine of hope may light up the future of humanity. The world today is undergoing major changes unseen in a century. These changes, not limited to a particular moment, event, country, or region, represent the profound and sweeping changes of our times. As changes of the times combine with the once-in-a-century pandemic, the world finds itself in a new period of turbulence and transformation. How to beat the pandemic and how to build the post-COVID world. These are major issues of the common concern to people around the world. There are also major, urgent questions we must give answers to. As the Chinese saying goes, the momentum of the world either flourishes or declines. The state of the world either progresses or regresses. The world is always developing through the movement of contradictions. Without contradiction, nothing would exist. The history of humanity is a history of achieving growth by meeting various tests and of developing by overcoming various crises. We need to move forward by following the logic of historical progress and develop by riding the tide of development of our times. Notwithstanding all vicissitudes, humanity will move on. We need to learn from comparing long history cycles and see the changing things through the subtle and minute. We need to foster new opportunities amidst crises, open up new horizons on the shifting landscape, and pull great strength to go through difficulties and challenges. First, we need to embrace cooperation and jointly defeat the pandemic. Confronted by the once-in-a-century pandemic, which will affect the future of humanity, the international community has fought a tenacious battle. Facts have shown, once again, that amidst the raging torrents of a global crisis, countries are not riding separately in some 190 small boats, but are rather all in a giant ship on which our shared destiny hinges. Small boats may not survive a storm, but a giant ship is strong enough to brave a storm. Thanks to the concerted efforts of the international community, major progress has been made in the global fight against the pandemic. That said, the pandemic is proving a protracted one, resurging with more variants and spreading faster than before. It poses a serious threat to people's safety and health and exerts a profound impact on the global economy. Strong confidence and cooperation represent the only right way to defeat the pandemic. Holding each other back or shifting blame would only cause needless delay in response and distract us from the overall objective. Countries need to strengthen international cooperation against COVID-19, carry out active cooperation on research and development of medicines, jointly build multiple lines of defense against the coronavirus, and speed up the efforts to build a global community of health for all. Of particular importance is to fully leverage vaccines as a powerful weapon, ensure their equitable distribution, quicken vaccination, and close the global immunization gap, so as to truly safeguard people's lives, health, and livelihoods. China is a country that delivers on its promises. China has already sent over 2 billion doses of vaccines to more than 120 countries and international organizations. Still, China will provide another 1 billion doses to African countries, including 600 million doses as donation, and will also donate 150 million doses to ASEAN countries. Second, we need to resolve various risks and promote steady recovery of the world economy. The world economy is emerging from the depth, yet it still faces many constraints. The global industrial supply chains have been disrupted. Commodity prices continue to rise. Energy supply remains tight. These risks compound one another and heighten the uncertainty about economic recovery. The global low inflation environment has notably changed, and the risks of inflation driven by multiple factors are surfacing. If major economies slam on the brakes or take a U-turn in their monetary policies, there would be serious negative spillovers. They would present challenges to global economic and financial stability, and developing countries would bear the brunt of it. In the context of ongoing COVID-19 response, we need to explore new drivers of economic growth, new modes of social life, and new pathways for people-to-people exchange, in a bid to facilitate cross-border trade, keep industrial and supply chains secure and smooth, and promote steady and solid progress in global economic recovery. Economic globalization is the trend of the times. Though countercurrents are sure to exist in the river, none could stop it from flowing to the sea. Driving forces bolster the river's momentum, and resistance may yet enhance its flow. Despite the countercurrents and dangerous shoals along the way, economic globalization has never and will not veer off course. Countries around the world should uphold true multilateralism. We should remove barriers, not erect walls. We should open up, not close off. We should seek integration, not decoupling. This is the way to build an open world economy. We should guide reforms of the global governance system with the principle of fairness and justice, and uphold the multilateral trading system with the World Trade Organization at its center. We should make generally acceptable and effective rules for artificial intelligence and digital economy on the basis of full consultation, and create an open, just, and non-discriminatory environment for scientific and technological innovation. This is the way to make economic globalization more open, inclusive, balanced, and beneficial for all, and to fully unleash the vitality of the world economy. A common understanding among us is that to turn the world economy from crisis to recovery, it is imperative to strengthen macro-policy coordination. Major economies should see the world as one community, think in a more systematic way, increase policy transparency and information sharing, and coordinate the objectives, intensity, and pace of fiscal and monetary policies, so as to prevent the world economy from plummeting again. Major developed countries should adopt responsible economic policies, manage policy spillovers, and avoid severe impacts on developing countries. International economic and financial institutions should play their constructive role to pull global consensus, enhance policy synergy, and prevent systemic risks. Third, we need to bridge the development divide and revitalize global development. The process of global development is suffering from severe disruption, entailing more outstanding problems like a widening north-south gap, divergent recovery trajectories, development fault lines, and a technological divide. The Human Development Index has declined for the first time in 30 years. The world's poor population has increased by more than 100 million. Nearly 800 million people live in hunger. Difficulties are mounting in food security, education, employment, medicine, health, and other areas important to people's livelihoods. Some developing countries have fallen back into poverty and instability due to the pandemic. Many developed countries are also living through a hard time. No matter what difficulties may come our way, we must adhere to a people-centered philosophy of development. place development and livelihoods front and center in global macro policies, realize the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and build greater synergy among existing mechanisms of development cooperation to promote balanced development worldwide. We need to uphold the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, promote international cooperation on climate change in the context of development, and implement the outcomes of COP26 to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Developed economies should take the lead in honoring their emissions reduction responsibilities, deliver on their commitment of financial and technological support, and create the necessary conditions for developing countries to address climate change and achieve sustainable development. Last year, I put forward a global development initiative at the UN General Assembly to draw international attention to the pressing challenges faced by developing countries. The initiative is a public good, open to the whole world, which aims to form synergy with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and boost common development across the world. China stands ready to work with all partners to jointly translate the initiative into concrete actions and make sure that no country is left behind in this process. Fourth, we need to discard Cold War mentality and seek peaceful coexistence and win-win outcomes. Our world today is far from being tranquil. Rhetorics that stoke hatred and prejudice abound. Acts of containment, suppression, or confrontation arising thereof do all harm, not the least good, to world peace and security. History has proved time and again, the confrontation does not solve problems. It only invites catastrophic consequences. Protectionism and unilateralism can protect no one. They ultimately hurt the interests of others as well as one's own. Even worse are the practices of hegemony and bullying, which run counter to the tide of history. Naturally, countries have divergences and disagreements between them. Yet, a zero-sum approach that enlarges one's own gain at the expense of others will not help. Acts of single-mindedly building exclusive yards with high walls or parallel systems, of enthusiastically putting together exclusive small circles or blocks that polarize the world, of overstretching the concept of national security to hold back economic and technological advances of other countries, and of fanning ideological antagonism and politicizing or weaponizing economic, scientific, and technological issues will gravely undercut international efforts to tackle common challenges. The right way forward for humanity is peaceful development and win-win cooperation. Different countries and civilizations may prosper together on the basis of respect for each other and seek common ground and win-win outcomes by setting aside differences. We should follow the trend of history, work for a stable international order, advocate common values of humanity, and build a community with a shared future for mankind. We should choose dialogue over confrontation, inclusiveness over exclusion, and stand against all forms of unilateralism, protectionism, hegemony, or power politics. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, last year, the Communist Party of China celebrated the 100th anniversary of its founding. Through a century of tenacious struggle, the CPC has rallied and led the Chinese people in accomplishing remarkable achievements in the advancement of the nation and the betterment of people's lives. We have realized a moderately prosperous society in all respects and won the battle against poverty, both according to plan, and found a historic solution to ending absolute poverty, Now China is marching on a new journey of building a modern socialist country in all respects. China will stay committed to pursuing high-quality development. The Chinese economy enjoys a good momentum overall. Last year, our GDP grew by around 8%, achieving the dual target of fairly high growth and relatively low inflation. Shifts in the domestic and international economic environment have brought tremendous pressure. But the fundamentals of the Chinese economy, characterized by strong resilience, enormous potential, and long-term sustainability, remain unchanged. We have every confidence in the future of China's economy. The wealth of a country is measured by the abundance of its people. Thanks to considerable economic growth, the Chinese people are living much better lives. Nonetheless, we are soberly aware that to meet people's aspiration for an even better life, we still have much hard work to do in the long run. China has made it clear that we strive for more visible and substantive progress in the well-rounded development of individuals and the common prosperity of the entire population. We are working hard on all fronts to deliver this goal. The common prosperity we desire is not egalitarianism. To use an analogy, we will first make the pie bigger and then divide it properly through reasonable institutional arrangements. As a rising tide lifts all boats, everyone will get a fair share from development, and development gains will benefit all our people in a more substantial and equitable way. China will stay committed to reform and opening up. For China, reform and opening up is always a work in process. Whatever change in the international landscape, China will always hold high the banner of reform and opening up. China will continue to let the market play a decisive role in resource allocation and see to it that the government better plays its role. We will be steadfast in consolidating and developing the public sector, just as we are steadfast in encouraging, supporting, and guiding the development of the non-public sector. We will build a unified, open, competitive, and orderly market system, where all businesses enjoy equal status before the law and have equal opportunities in the marketplace. All types of capital are welcome to operate in China in compliance with laws and regulations and play a positive role for the development of the country. China will continue to expand high-standard opening up, steadily advance institutional opening up that covers rules, management, and standards, deliver national treatment for foreign businesses, and promote high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. With the entry into force of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement on the 1st of January this year, China will faithfully fulfill its obligations and deepen economic and trade ties with other RCEP parties. China will also continue to work for the joining of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, with a view to further integrating into the regional and global economy and achieving mutual benefit and win-win results. China will stay committed to promoting ecological conservation. As I have said many times, we should never grow the economy at the cost of resource depletion and environmental degradation, which is like draining a pond to get fish. Nor should we sacrifice growth to protect the environment, which is like climbing a tree to catch fish. Guided by our philosophy that clean waters and green mountains are just as valuable as gold and silver, China has carried out holistic conservation and systematic governance of its mountains, rivers, forests, farmlands, lakes, grasslands, and deserts. We do everything we can to conserve the ecological system, intensify pollution prevention and control, and improve the living and working environment for our people. China is now putting in place the world's largest national parks system. Last year, we successfully hosted COP15 to the Convention on Biological Diversity, contributing China's share to a clean and beautiful world. Achieving carbon peak and carbon neutrality are the intrinsic requirements of China's own high-quality development and a solemn pledge to the international community. China will honor its word and keep working toward its goal. We have unveiled an action plan for carbon dioxide peaking before 2030, to be followed by implementation plans for specific sectors such as energy, industry, and construction. China now has the world's biggest carbon market and biggest clean power generation system. The installed capacity of renewable energy has exceeded 1 billion kilowatts, and the construction of wind and photovoltaic power stations, with a total installed capacity of 100 million kilowatts, is well underway. Carbon peak and carbon neutrality cannot be realized overnight. Through solid and steady steps, China will pursue an orderly phase-down of traditional energy in the cause of finding reliable substitution in new energy. This approach, which combines phasing out the old and bringing in the new, will ensure steady economic and social development. China will also actively engage in international cooperation on climate and jointly work for a complete transition to a greener economy and society. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Davos is known as a heaven for winter sports. The Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games will open soon. We are confident that China will present a streamlined, safe, and splendid games to the world. The official motto for Beijing 2022 is "Together for a Shared Future." Indeed, let us join hands with full confidence and work together for a shared future. Thank you.
Well, we were watching live signal of President Xi Jinping addressing world leaders as well as major delegates at the Davos Agenda for 2022. This event has been rescheduled to this summer, and then world leaders are now addressing, giving solutions to the big questions of the world. And President Xi Jinping, of course, had a world vision. He called on sticking to international cooperation as well as to fight the pandemic and really clear the shadow of this pandemic. Two big questions from his speech: how the world could, beat the pandemic and rebuild the world. Post-COVID world. And now let's get some more discussion. Let's get back to our guest, Professor Liu Baocheng. So, Professor Liu, we could really feel that there was a sense of responsibility, a sense of mission. There was calling from President Xi as to how the world could steer out of the COVID-19 situation and really pick up speed in terms of economic recovery. What was the issue that has the most global significance to world economic recovery from Xi's speech?
I think of course, we are facing the immediate enemy, which is very cunning and smart, I should say, that they have a lot more mutations than we have expected. So therefore, the medical circle, the pharmaceutical circle will have to work very hard. And of course, hospitals will have to take the responsibility, etc. So, that is really a precondition for people to be able to return to their job, to live a normal life. But in the meantime, of course, the political leaders need to really build a consensus that this is the reality that we are facing, and there's never a way that we can cut off each other. The world is ever interdependent, and therefore we need to work together and drive away those, whoever are in a way to block our collaboration. So the businesses, first of all, there needs to be a stronger support for those small and medium-sized businesses for them to survive, because they are not only connected with jobs, but also they are connected with families more immediately. And of course, the entire business needs to find a way to work closer to maintain the supply chain and value chain so that they are able to continue to cater to the real needs of their people. And then, the consumers also needs to be aware of two things. First of all, they are global citizens. They should take care of the environment, and they should contribute however little it might be to the climate change, by having less waste and less garbage, etc. And in the meantime, they also need to manage their life more deliberately over the spending, etc. So in a way, it's all walks of life, and all nations should really be there to work hands in hands to address the immediate issue of the pandemic, the climate change, and also global recovery. So people do have some pessimistic feeling over what is lying next, but we still are able to manage above 4% growth. So this is not really the end of the world. The world is still resilient. It is really resilient because we are still interdependent and because we are still able to work together with confidence.
Yeah, and Professor Liu, now I want to share with you and our viewers some of the key points from President Xi's speech. He said that countries should find new drivers in the context of normalized pandemic control. Let's take a listen to this.
We need to resolve various risks and promote steady recovery of the world economy. The world economy is emerging from the depth, yet it still faces many constraints. The global industrial supply chains have been disrupted. Commodity prices continue to rise. Energy supply remains tight. These risks compound one another and heighten the uncertainty about economic recovery. The global low inflation environment has notably changed, and the risks of inflation driven by multiple factors are surfacing. If major economies slam on the brakes or take a U-turn in their monetary policies, there would be serious negative spillovers. They would present challenges to global economic and financial stability, and developing countries would bear the brunt of it. In the context of ongoing COVID-19 response, we need to explore new drivers of economic growth, new modes of social life, and new pathways for people-to-people exchange. In a bid to facilitate cross-border trade, keep industrial and supply chains secure and smooth, and promote steady and solid progress in global economic.
So, Professor, let's talk about these new drivers. The world was thinking that it was seeing, some light at the end of the tunnel, and then waves after waves, people's hopes were dashed. What do you think these new drivers for economic growth and new engines for economic recovery would be?
Well, actually, Professor Schwab, leader of Davos, advocates for a long time the fourth new industrial revolution, what he terms as the information technology that is supported by the artificial intelligence and big data, etc. Of course, that can save a lot of people's contact, and that can really save also a lot of labor intensity work. So that's definitely the most important one that can shift the growth model and also shift the movement of goods versus people. And in the meantime, of course, supported by that, the e-commerce is still there to serve as the mainstreamer in providing people's needs instead of people gathering into the shopping mall more often. And of course, the online communication could be the norm of the day. Even if after the pandemic, for example, I've been teaching online to our international students for the last 2 years, and we have a number of conferences online, etc. So people will have to learn. People will have to be adaptive to it. But in the meantime, the world is going to see quite a divide. Those who are able to have more vaccination, those who are able to quickly adapt to the new environment, and they are able to see a better recovery of their economy and also their social life. But those who are really lagging behind will be able to face far more challenges. And that is why the world needs to work together, and those better able countries also needs to extend a more generous hand to those less developed worlds so that they can come to speed. Because after all, we are really sharing the same future, and we are also facing the same challenges, and responsibility needs to be common but also differentiated.
Yeah, and Professor Xi was confident that economic globalization is a trend of our times and countries should really stick to true multilateralism. Let's now take a listen to what he had to say about this.
Countries around the world should uphold true multilateralism. We should remove barriers, not erect walls. We should open up, not close off. We should seek integration, not decoupling. This is the way to build an open world economy. We should guide reforms of the global governance system with the principle of fairness and justice, and uphold the multilateral trading system with the World Trade Organization at its center. We should make generally acceptable and effective rules for artificial intelligence and digital economy on the basis of full consultation, and create an open, just, and non-discriminatory environment for scientific and technological innovation. This is the way to make economic globalization more open, inclusive, balanced, and beneficial for all, and to fully unleash the vitality of the world economy.
Well, let's face it, Professor, we do see splits and divisions in the world, and countries have their own different development stage, their agenda vary. Why is it still important to uphold the WTO-centered multilateral trade system, and what could we do to really go against those currents in the process?
Well, because we are so much interdependent, WTO now hosts the 164 members, which covers 98% of the whole world trade. So therefore, by working under the WTO rules and by also abiding by the WTO rules, and the world are able to get more connected on a rule-based forum. And in the meantime, they are also able to streamline their connectivity with other countries, be that neighbors or remote trade partners. And then, the essence of WTO is really to promote the open economy across the world. So therefore, the tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers are the enemies of WTO, so that we really have a realistic issue that we are facing, that some countries do not really see that WTO is really functioning well, and therefore they really take the time to close the door, to erect the higher tariff barriers for this reason or for the other reason, national security, etc. So, this is something that we should really be, the world should really guard against, and by working together to stamp out those sentiment and also those anti-globalization measures.
Professor, let me just jump in here and ask you this. Some of the countermeasures, some of the countercurrents in the process of economic globalization, as we mentioned, could include, for example, protectionism as well as unilateralism. And this is what President Xi has had to say about this.
We need to discard Cold War mentality and seek peaceful coexistence and win-win outcomes. Our world today is far from being tranquil. Rhetorics that stoke hatred and prejudice abound. Acts of containment, suppression, or confrontation arising thereof do all harm, not the least good, to world peace and security. History has proved time and again, the confrontation does not solve problems. It only invites catastrophic consequences. Protectionism and unilateralism can protect no one. They ultimately hurt the interests of others as well as one's own. Even worse are the practices of hegemony and bullying, which run counter to the tide of history. Naturally, countries have divergences and disagreements between them. Yet, a zero-sum approach that enlarges one's own gain at the expense of others will not help. Acts of single-mindedly building exclusive yards with high walls or parallel systems, of enthusiastically putting together exclusive small circles or blocks that polarize the world, of overstretching the concept of national security to hold back economic and technological advances of other countries, and of fanning ideological antagonism and politicizing or weaponizing economic, scientific, and technological issues will gravely undercut international efforts to tackle common challenges.
Professor Liu, we are running out of time, but I want to ask you one more time. China has been calling on internationalization time and again. Why is it so important to keep politics out of economic and technical issues?
Yes, right now we are also facing the countercurrent against the globalization by protectionism, polarization, and antagonism. So therefore, President Xi is really addressing the major issues of ideological confrontation, and now it is really the time for some of the countries to think over that it is easier to blame the others for the surpassing or stepping on the heels by further development, but it does not really solve the problem. Only by respecting each other and only by checking on our own problems and are able to find solutions, in partnership instead of in antagonism with other countries. And that's the only way out, and that's the most viable and most sensible way that the countries and the world should really work together towards to.
Some of the solutions for the world's biggest questions. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights throughout the hour. Professor Liu Baocheng, we appreciate your time. And that's going to do it for our special program covering the speech of President Xi Jinping at the Davos Agenda 2022. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again at the top of next hour.